Imagine living in a country celebrated globally for its digital prowess, right? Cutting-edge cybersecurity, a real leader in its region.
Yeah, top of the game, supposedly.
Exactly. Now, picture that same nation finding its government websites, its citizens' personal data, even critical national infrastructure,
Yeah.
just constantly under siege. Cyber attacks, relentlessly.
It's a huge contradiction, isn't it?
It really is. What happens when that official story, the narrative of strength and stability, just clashes head on with the really unsettling reality of repeated digital breaches?
And crucially, how do the folks on the other side, I mean, the actual hackers involved, explain what's really going on behind all the headlines?
Because they do have explanations.
Oh, they definitely do. It creates this deeply fascinating and often contradictory picture, a real stark breach between that perception and the reality.
And that's exactly what we're going to try and untangle in today's deep dive.
Yeah, let's get into it.
That's right. Today we're taking a journey into the curious and complex world of cybersecurity in Uruguay. We'll explore this really striking gap between Uruguay's strong international reputation in cybersecurity and the, frankly, alarming surge in actual cyber incidents, especially the ones hitting the government.
But we're going beyond just the official reports here. That's the key.
Absolutely. We're going to unpack the significant, sometimes really startling gaps between what you might read in the mainstream news and the candid, sometimes uncomfortable explanations offered by the very individuals involved in these breaches, including that elusive gov.eth persona.
Yeah, the gov.eth angle is, well, it's a story in itself.
It really is.
So our mission today is to navigate a truly intricate stack of sources. We've meticulously analyzed comprehensive reports on government breaches, pored over official cybersecurity data from key agencies like AGESIC and CERTuy.
Those are the big ones in Uruguay, AGESIC and CERTuy.
Exactly, and we've dissected in-depth surveys looking at how prepared both the public and private sectors actually are.
But the real kicker, what sets this deep dive apart, Ray?
Yeah, I think so. It's our access to direct accounts from the hackers themselves, amplified by the voices of cybersecurity experts who are actively challenging, and in some cases, like outright refuting the mainstream media narratives.
A counter-narrative.
Totally. So we're here to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights, offering you a kind of shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on this really complex issue.
And why should this matter to you listening right now? This isn't just some, intriguing case study about a South American nation, as fascinating as Uruguay is.
No, it's much broader than that.
It really is. This is a masterclass in how information flows, or just as often, how it gets deliberately blocked or spun in our digital age.
How stories get built.
Exactly. It's about how official narratives are constructed, how public trust is both built and eroded, and why understanding multiple, sometimes really conflicting perspectives is absolutely vital for discerning the truth about complex issues like national security, like safeguarding your own personal data, no matter where you are in the world.
It really is a battle for perception, playing out in real time.
So let's unpack this. Let's dive in.
Okay, let's start by painting the official picture first, just to set the stage for this paradox we're talking about.
Good idea. Where does Uruguay stand officially?
Well, Uruguay has undeniably earned this formidable reputation. A regional powerhouse in cybersecurity maturity, the International Telecommunication Union, the ITU.
That's the UN agency for tech stuff, right?
Exactly. They published their 2024 Global Cybersecurity Index, the GCI. And Uruguay's standing is genuinely impressive.
Impressive feels like an understatement, actually. They ranked second in all of Latin America, pulled in an outstanding overall score of 18.93 out of 20.
Which is huge.
Huge. Only Brazil, a much, much larger nation, managed to edge them out. And that score, it's not just a number, right? It's a powerful signal of Uruguay's strategic commitment, their operational capabilities on a global scale. Tells you they've been investing and investing wisely.
Absolutely. And when you dig deeper into the breakdown of that GCI score, Uruguay's areas of excellence become even more striking.
Like what?
Well, for technical measures, for instance, they got a perfect 20 out of 20.
Wow. Perfect score.
Yeah. It indicates really advanced infrastructure, a robust and incredibly capable national computer security incident response team.
Yeah.
That's their CERTuy and top-tier incident response readiness.
Okay.
It's a clear reflection of significant sustained investment in the foundational bits of modern cyber defense, everything from sophisticated firewalls to real-time threat intelligence.
That's remarkable for a country Uruguay's size. And it's not just about the tech, is it? Their scores also point to something deeper, more strategic.
Exactly. They also scored highest in Latin America for organizational measures.
Yeah.
Pulled a 19.13 there.
Okay, what does organizational measures cover?
That tells you they have a well-defined national cybersecurity strategy
Yeah.
and really excellent coordination between the public and private sectors,
Mm.
which, is notoriously difficult to achieve.
Yeah, getting those two talking effectively is always a challenge.
Totally. And then they're also leading in capacity development with a 19.45.
Mm.
That implies they're prioritizing, actively investing in cybersecurity training, education, public awareness programs. They're clearly thinking long-term, building a resilient, skilled workforce and an informed public.
So they're building the human firewall, too, not just the technical one.
Precisely. And look, like any nation, they have areas for improvement. Legal measures, they're fifth in the region at 19.15. Cooperation, eighth at 16.58.
Still pretty high scores, though, relatively speaking.
Oh, absolutely. Still strong scores in a competitive field. These just represent areas for, targeted policy discussion, which we'll probably touch on later.
Okay.
But context is key here. These are relatively minor points when you look at their exceptional overall standing. So, the official narrative, the global assessments, they paint Uruguay as a true cybersecurity success story.
So, on paper, Uruguay looks like a cybersecurity superstar, shining example, especially in Latin America.
Textbook case.
But here's where it gets really interesting, where the core paradox of our deep dive just starts to emerge with, startling clarity.
Right.
The twist, despite this glowing reputation, those impressive GCI scores, 2024-2025 saw what authorities themselves are calling a concerning escalation in actual cyber attacks.
Yeah, and concerning escalation is the official term they used.
And the numbers from CERTuy, the very agency responsible for incident response, they are, frankly, startling.
They truly are. In 2024 alone, CERTuy registered a staggering 14,264 cyber incidents.
14,000.
Yeah. And just to grasp the scale of that, it nearly triples the 4,968 aggressions reported just the year before, in 2023.
Triples in 1 year.
Yep. That's an alarming increment of 65% in reported incidents and a colossal 187% increase in detected incidents over the previous year.
Wow, 187% increase in detections.
And this isn't just a blip. It's not an anomaly. There's been a consistent, sharp upward trend. They only reported 2,217 incidents back in 2019.
So a steady climb, then this massive explosion.
It unequivocally signals a rapidly escalating threat environment, one that just runs completely counter to that image of a secure, well-defended nation.
Okay, wow. 187% increase in detected incidents. That's not just a jump, it's an explosion. So how do you even begin to explain this paradox?
It's the million-dollar question, right?
How can a country consistently lauded as a regional leader be experiencing such a dramatic surge? Are their defenses actually failing? Or is there a more nuanced explanation going on here?
This is where the official interpretation articulated by AGESIC Director Hebert Paguas becomes really crucial.
Okay, what does he say?
He suggests two things. First, this increase aligns with broader global trends. I mean, cyber attacks are rising everywhere.
That's true enough.
And perhaps more importantly, it reflects Uruguay's significantly improved detection capabilities, better tools, better methodologies. He actually calls this phenomenon a visibility dividend.
A visibility dividend? Huh. That's a remarkably insightful way to frame it.
It is, isn't it?
So the idea is it's not necessarily that Uruguay is being targeted more than other comparable countries. It's that they've just gotten exceptionally better at seeing and cataloging the attacks that were probably always happening anyway.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's like installing a state-of-the-art radar system. Suddenly you detect thousands of birds, small drones, things your old system just couldn't register in the noise. The sky isn't suddenly more crowded. You're just seeing more of what's actually there.
Precisely. The establishment of their 24/7 Security Operations Center, their SOC, back in 2016.
Okay, so they've had that for a while.
Yeah, and coupled with continuous enhancements to their threat intelligence tools, their incident response processes, it's allowed Uruguay to, quote, see and catalog a vast number of low-level attacks and probes that would have previously gone completely undetected.
Right, the background noise that weaker systems miss.
Exactly. So from this perspective, this really high incident count, counterintuitively, can be seen as a kind of paradoxical indicator of institutional maturity.
How?
Well, a less capable nation, one without a sophisticated SOC or advanced detection tools, might face similar attacks, but simply lack the infrastructure to detect and record them, resulting in a deceptively low official count.
Okay, I see. So low numbers might actually mean you're blind, not safe.
Right. It highlights a critical insight. Sometimes, a rise in reported incidents can actually be a sign of success in cybersecurity, not failure.
Yeah.
You're finally seeing the true scale of the problem.
That's a fascinating reframe. So, on one hand, it's a testament to their success in understanding their actual attack surface, which is absolutely vital, right? You can't defend what you don't see.
Absolutely crucial first step.
But on the other hand, it undeniably signals a genuinely heightened threat environment where vulnerabilities are being actively sought and exploited.
No doubt about that.
It's like discovering your old house has way more leaks than you thought because you finally got proper diagnostic tools. It's good you know where to patch, but it still means you have a lot of leaks that need patching.
Exactly. And this leads us directly to the next layer of complexity. How does a nation, even one with sophisticated detection, uniformly mitigate those threats across a diverse, increasingly complex digital estate, especially when the attackers are constantly evolving their tactics?
Yeah, seeing the problem is one thing.
Fixing it consistently everywhere.
Yeah.
That's the real challenge.
Okay, so we know how much they're being attacked. Now let's dig into the specifics. Who are these attackers? What exactly are they targeting? And what methods are they using?
Right, the who, what, how.
Our sources describe a remarkably broad spectrum of attacks. Everything from, relatively simple website defacements and distributed denial of service, DDoS attacks.
Those are the ones designed to just knock a site offline by flooding it with traffic.
Right, all the way up to far more severe data breaches and crippling ransomware incidents.
Yeah, the landscape is varied, and the patterns and targets are quite clear and pretty concerning.
How so?
Adversaries are specifically focusing on those .gov.ue government domains, Uruguay's official government websites.
Okay, the front door.
But it's not just the front door. Beyond that public-facing facade, they're also after highly sensitive citizen data. We're talking personal identification numbers, contact info, even confidential internal government documents.
That suggests more than just disruption, then.
Absolutely. It suggests an intent to not just disrupt, but to actually compromise data and potentially use that data for further, more damaging activities later on.
Okay. And what about the actual tools and techniques, the dominant attack vectors they're using? Are we talking super sophisticated nation-state level stuff or more common things?
It looks like a strategic mix, actually, reflecting a wide range of threat actors. Phishing attempts.
Those sneaky emails trying to get your password.
Exactly. Those remain the most common initial entry point, which just demonstrates, again, that the human element is often the weakest link.
Always the case.
Yep. Followed by unauthorized access, malware installations, direct intrusion attempts. But what's particularly intriguing, and points to maybe a shift in strategy by the attackers,
What's that?
is that information gathering saw the highest growth. It increased by almost 14% over 2023.
Information gathering, so like reconnaissance.
Precisely. It indicates a more strategic shift towards systematic infiltration reconnaissance, basically casing the joint for data exfiltration, often serving as a precursor to more damaging attacks like financial fraud or ransomware. It suggests a patient, longer game approach from some attackers.
A longer game, indeed. Okay, now let's talk about the key threat actors themselves, because this is where the official narrative and the hackers' counter-narratives really start to diverge.
Yeah, this is where it gets messy.
The alias gov.eth pops up repeatedly in our sources, right? Often linked to high-profile incidents. But it's crucial to understand this isn't a single person, is it? It's more complicated.
No, absolutely not. And this is a critical distinction that often gets really muddled in public reporting. Gov.eth is an alias adopted by different individuals, sometimes different groups, sometimes even simultaneously.
Okay. And the .eth part, that's like a crypto thing.
Yeah, the eth suffix comes from the Ethereum name service. It's a decentralized naming system, often associated with crypto, blockchain, and sometimes, a broader anti-establishment or decentralized ideology.
Or maybe just a memorable handle.
Or just a memorable, provocative handle. Exactly. Which probably explains its appeal to different actors who are seeking notoriety, or maybe just a sense of collective identity.
So let's try and distinguish between these different gov.eth personas. Bring some clarity here. First, there's Alberto Daniel Hill. His Twitter handle is @ADanielHill, and he's sometimes associated with gov.eth, or at least comments on its activities. Who is he? What's his story?
Okay, Alberto Daniel Hill. He's a prominent Uruguayan cybersecurity expert, a computer engineer. He does have a controversial past, including time in prison for a computer-related crime.
Which he denies.
Which he vehemently denies committing. His motivation seems largely rooted in exposing what he sees as severe government incompetence in cybersecurity. And crucially, the misrepresentation and, in his view, unfair treatment of ethical hackers and security researchers by authorities and the media.
So he's advocating for them.
Yeah, he aims to highlight systemic weaknesses, push for better cybersecurity practices, and a more nuanced understanding of hacking activities. He notably confirmed hacking the content management system, the CMS, of at El Paisoi.
That's a major news portal in Uruguay.
Exactly. Significant, though importantly, not a .gov.oi government site. He's also openly released unedited videos discussing various hacks. And he's been very clear, explicitly denying any involvement in the Bucavist Turismo hack we'll probably talk about later.
So he sees himself as a kind of truth teller, maybe a provocateur, even if his methods are unorthodox.
That seems fair, like a controversial whistleblower using his platform to draw attention to vulnerabilities and challenge that official narrative.
Okay. But then we encounter a completely different gov.eth, an Argentine hacker. This is where that shared alias gets really ambiguous, right?
Yes, totally different individual. This is reportedly a 22-year-old, often collaborates with another hacker known as H4by0er1337.
Okay.
This specific gov.eth claimed responsibility for a series of high-profile attacks on Argentine government sites, like argentina.gov.eth, be Argentina, also the defacement of perfil.com in late 2024, early 2025.
And their motivation.
Interestingly, their stated motivations were for fun and boredom. They explicitly denied any political intent in those Argentine government hacks.
For fun.
Yeah. However, it's vital to note this individual has publicly identified as National Socialist and made anti-Semitic statements.
Okay, that's disturbing.
Extremely. And for our deep dive into Uruguay, it's crucial to emphasize no direct involvement in specific Uruguayan gov.a attacks is clearly established for this particular Argentine gov.eth in our sources. But the shared alias undeniably causes confusion and warrants this clear distinction.
Right, so different person, very different and disturbing personal ideologies, even if they use the same handle. And then we have another gov.eth who attacked TV Ciudad, the public TV channel in Uruguay.
That's correct. Third distinct instance. April 2025, an attacker using the gov.eth alias defaced the website of TV Ciudad, a Uruguayan public television channel.
And this one stood out, didn't it?
Yeah, this incident was particularly noteworthy and disturbing because it involved the use of AI-generated compromising images of prominent Uruguayan politicians.
Like deepfakes.
Essentially, yeah. Images of presidential candidates Yamandu Orsi and Carolina Cossi, also the head of the National Emergency System, Pablo Lema. The defacer also issued direct threats against the Chamber of Commerce.
Wow.
So this incident is highly relevant. Why? Its explicitly political nature, the continued use of the gov.eth alias, and critically, the deployment of these sophisticated disinformation tactics like deepfakes, which introduces a whole new level of psychological warfare into the cyber landscape.
It's quite a spectrum. Different motivations, different methods, all operating under that single shared alias. Beyond the various gov.eth folks, what other hacker groups have been identified as active in this space?
We have several others mentioned. Groups like La Pampa Leaks, Bogota Leaks, and Uruguay 337, they're allegedly Argentine.
Okay.
They claimed responsibility for that significant March 2025 Dynesia hack, the aviation authority one, and openly posted anti-progressive messages claiming they had accessed sensitive data.
Many others.
Then there's the Alpha Group. This is a globally operating ransomware syndicate notorious for widespread attacks. They were responsible for that severe ransomware attack on the Paysandú municipal government in July 2024.
We'll definitely need to unpack that one.
Oh, yeah. Our sources also mention other groups like God Hand and ex-presidents as perpetrating high-profile attacks. Ex-presidents apparently previously hit the Intendencia de Flores, another local government, and claimed responsibility for a leak from the University of the Republic.
So a mix of politically motivated groups and financially motivated ransomware gangs.
Exactly. And then there's Vladdy. This individual's name comes up repeatedly in connection with some of these hackers and the official responses.
Right, Vladdy. What's the story there?
Vladdy is an individual reportedly arrested in Uruguay for hacking activities, mentioned as an associate of Alberto Daniel Hill.
Okay.
Hill specifically cited Vladdy's arrest as a prime example of government scapegoating, claiming he was an easy target.
Interesting.
And get this, the Argentine gov.eth we talked about earlier also mentioned a friend named Vladdy who was in prison for hacking activities, suggesting a possible connection or at least a common name floating around in these interconnected hacker circles.
That is interesting.
Yeah, the overarching takeaway from this whole overview of threat actors is just the incredible diversity. Motivations, capabilities. You've got hacktivists driven by politics or social causes, purely financially motivated ransomware operators,
Yeah.
individuals may be acting out of fun or boredom
It's all over the map.
completely, which underscores the absolute necessity for Uruguay to deploy a multifaceted national defense strategy. Because a single approach just won't cut it against such a varied threat landscape.
Okay, now that we've sort of identified the players, let's delve into some of the most impactful incidents. Really grasp the reality on the ground and understand how these different narratives collide.
Yeah. Case studies, let's do it.
First up, the National Directorate of Civil Aviation and Aeronautical Infrastructure, DINATIA. That hack in March 2025. This happened on Uruguayan Air Force Day, which feels, well, particularly
A
symbolic.
very deliberate and symbolic target and timing, absolutely.
Yeah.
The incident, March 17, 18, 2025, it involved the defacement of the dynatia.gov.aoy website via what's known as DNS poisoning.
Can you explain DNS poisoning quickly?
Sure. In simple terms, attackers successfully altered the domain name system records. Think of the DNS as the Internet's phone book. They altered the records to redirect users trying to access Dynatia's official site to a manipulated, illegitimate web page they controlled.
Okay, and how did they manage that?
Well, a preliminary analysis by cybersecurity experts quickly pointed to a critical vulnerability: the glaring lack of DNS security extensions, or DNS-SEC, on Dynatia's servers. Yeah. Think of DNS-SEC as the digital equivalent of a signed and sealed envelope for your website's address. It ensures no one can tamper with it and redirect you somewhere else. Its absence here basically left an open door, a fundamental security lapse.
So a fundamental lapse allowed them in. What data was compromised? Or at least, what did the hackers claim was compromised? And how did that stack up against the official response?
Right, the claim versus reality part. The exposed data, publicly displayed by the hackers, included personal details of high-profile figures. President Yamandu Orsi's mobile phone number, a photo from his ID doc.
Oh, wow. The president's details?
Yeah, and a similar ID photo of AGESIC's security director, Mauricio Papaleo.
So embarrassing, at the very least.
Definitely. But while the hackers, notably Leaks and their collaborators, boasted of far wider access, claiming they got internal emails, Interpol communications, public security management system records.
That sounds much more serious.
Much more serious. But Uruguayan authorities almost immediately countered this narrative. They contended the attack was superficial, only affecting the front page, and that any exposed personal data likely came from prior leaks or public sources, not a deep breach of Dynatia's internal systems.
Okay, so straight into damage control mode.
Pretty much. This is where that battle for perception really kicks off for each incident we look at.
That's a stark contrast. Claims of deep access versus official statements of a superficial hit. What about attribution? Who claimed it, and what were their motives?
As we mentioned, the attack was claimed by Leaks, Bogota Leaks, and Uruguayo 1337. These groups are alleged to be from Argentina.
Right.
Their defacement messages were explicitly political, railing against perceived deteriorating conditions in Uruguay, criticizing the 2030 Agenda, the World Economic Forum, alleged government corruption, what they broadly termed progressivism.
So clear political messaging.
Very clear. Slogans like, "Uruguay is getting worse and worse," "Uruguay needs rulers, not puppets," were prominently displayed. Cybersecurity expert Fernando Barro suggested a clear political motivation, potentially from far-right elements within Argentina trying to influence Uruguayan discourse.
Interesting cross-border political dimension there. And
Yeah.
how did the authorities respond operationally?
Well, the Dynasia site was restored relatively quickly, within about 5 hours, apparently.
Okay, that's pretty fast.
Yeah. An investigation was immediately launched by the Unidad de Cybercrimen, the National Police Cybercrime Unit, working with AGESIC. The presidency vehemently denied any deep breach of the public security management system.
And the takeaway.
This incident really highlighted the critical need for DNS-SEC implementation across all government domains. But the contrasting narratives, hackers boasting deep access, authorities downplaying severity alongside that rapid restoration. It truly underscores that this was as much a battle for perception as it was a technical breach.
Controlling the public story can be as crucial as the technical fix, maybe more so when public trust is on the line.
Absolutely. Which gives us our first key insight from this case. Even with advanced cybersecurity frameworks and rapid technical recovery, the public perception of an attack's severity is often the first and most critical battleground, influencing public trust more profoundly than any technical patch.
Okay, let's move on to another incident with potentially huge implications for citizens. The National Directorate of Civil Identification, or DNIC, compromise. Also in March 2025. This sounds like an attack right on the heart of the nation's identity infrastructure.
Indeed. The DNIC virtual site, the place managing national identity documents, was targeted.
Yeah.
Similar to Dinasia, President Orsi's photo and phone number were again published on the compromised site.
Déjà vu.
Yeah. And cybersecurity expert Alberto Daniel Hill, the one we discussed earlier, claimed this wasn't isolated. He suggested information stolen from the Ministry of Defense back in January was already being sold, implying a larger ongoing vulnerability. Now, while official authorities, including the Minister of Interior, initially stated no damage occurred to DNIC systems, sources close to DNIC reportedly confirmed that intruders did access files.
Ah, the inside story differs again.
Seems so. With cybersecurity experts widely believing sensitive citizen data had been copied, even if it wasn't immediately published or leaked widely.
So again, a clear divergence. Official reassurances versus what internal sources or independent experts were suggesting. What about the response and any specific context surrounding this one?
The Minister of Interior did acknowledge the incident publicly. AGESIC Director Mordecki noted the political motives likely at play. Significantly, one arrest was made in connection with this incident.
Okay, so they caught someone this time.
Yeah, which is notable given how elusive many cybercriminals are. This attack, targeting an entity responsible for fundamental citizen ID data, carries immense symbolic weight. It could seriously erode public confidence in the state's ability to protect their most basic information.
And there was context about their systems being old, right?
Right. Crucial context. A former minister back in 2022 had famously described DNIC's computer systems as ancient, very vulnerable, prehistoric computers, which raises serious questions about systemic underinvestment in critical infrastructure.
Prehistoric computers running national ID systems, not ideal.
Not ideal at all. And the fact that an arrest was made here, contrasting with the often anonymous international groups, points back to that diverse threat landscape. You've got sophisticated groups and potentially more domestic, maybe less organized actors involved too.
Okay, our next case involves the Ministry of Social Development, MIDES. They experienced multiple data breaches in March and April 2025. This wasn't just one hit, was it? Sounds like a sustained compromise.
You're right. It was a series of breaches, which indicates persistent vulnerabilities, not just a one-off failure.
What happened exactly?
The first significant incident hit March 19, 2025, involved the leak of 264 internal MIDES documents and 275 national ID scans. The attacker who posted about it on illicit forums like breach forums even mentioned specific aliases, gov.eth, pbar1, Vladdy, and threatened to leak more credentials.
Naming names, almost. And then it happened again.
Yeah, less than 3 weeks later, April 7, 2025, a far more extensive leak occurred. This one exposed a staggering 37,756 documents containing personally identifiable information, PII.
What kind of PII?
Everything.
Yeah.
National ID numbers, dates of birth, family details, addresses, phone numbers, emails, highly sensitive stuff. And the hacker brazenly claimed this was just a sample from a database containing info on over 290,000 households.
290,000 households. That's massive potential exposure for vulnerable citizens relying on MIDES.
Huge. And it sounds like external parties, independent cybersecurity researchers, played a crucial role in bringing these leaks to light, even before official acknowledgement.
Who were they?
Firms like Birmingham Cyber Arms Ltd. and an independent analyst named Mauro Eldridge. They were instrumental. They discovered these leaks and proactively alerted both authorities and the public before MIDES issued any official acknowledgement.
So the government wasn't the first to know, or at least not the first to speak.
It certainly seems that way. This sequence of events starkly highlights a reactive posture from the ministry. Suggest either deficiencies, maybe significant delays in their internal detection, or public communication processes. Either way, it can severely undermine public trust during a crisis.
And May's response?
Mays eventually confirmed a security incident, initiated a joint investigation with CERTuy and AGESIC, and publicly pledged compliance with URCDP, Uruguay's data protection body. But these repeated breaches, especially of sensitive data belonging to vulnerable populations, they suggest systemic weaknesses in data safeguarding, raises serious questions about the ongoing effectiveness of their security measures.
Okay, moving on to the Intendencia de Paysandú ransomware attack, July 2024. This sounds like a truly catastrophic incident for a local government. bringing operations to a complete standstill.
It was severe, absolutely. July 24, 2024, the Paysandú City Hall, a local municipal government, got hit by a devastating ransomware attack, orchestrated by the Alpha Group.
Alpha Group, that's one of the global ransomware syndicates you mentioned.
That's them. They demanded a significant ransom,
Mm.
$650,000 USD.
Wow. And the impact on Paysandú.
Catastrophic. All their IT systems, everything. Payroll, tax collections, civil registry services, their financial system, and crucially, their backups were paralyzed.
Everything went down.
Everything. Operations reverted to manual processes.
Uh-huh.
Imagine the disruption. A particularly grim and telling statement from Paysandú officials at the time was, quote, "We lost all backups."
Oof. We lost all backups. That phrase alone sends shivers down the spine of anyone who understands digital security. That's the nightmare scenario.
It truly is. It exposed profound critical weaknesses in their data backup and disaster recovery planning.
What kind of weaknesses?
Well, it suggested potential issues with network segmentation, meaning if one part of the network is compromised, it ideally shouldn't spread everywhere else. Or maybe a complete lack of immutable storage.
Immutable storage. What's that?
It's a type of data storage that cannot be altered or deleted once it's written. Absolutely essential for ransomware protection because the attackers can't encrypt or delete your backups if they're immutable.
Got it. So a major failure on the backup front. What did Paysandú do? Did they pay the ransom?
No. And this is commendable. In a very principled move, the mayor of Paysandú, Nicolas Oliveira, made a firm and public decision not to pay the ransom.
Why not?
He stated it was people's money and would not be used to fund criminals. AGESIC and CERTuy got deeply involved in the recovery efforts.
And did they get the data back?
Remarkably, yes. By October 2024, their data was reportedly 100% recovered with external support, though it was an arduous months-long process.
That's a strong stance and a testament to their resilience and the recovery efforts. Sounds like a real-world case study in crisis management. Maybe something that could influence national policy on ransomware?
It absolutely is. Mayor Oliveira's transparent approach, his firm decision not to incentivize cybercriminals by paying, and the eventual, albeit difficult, recovery. It provides a powerful case study.
A model, maybe?
Could very well serve as a model for how other public and private entities in Uruguay, and maybe beyond, can resist and overcome such attacks without giving in to criminal demands. It might well shape future national strategies on ransomware response.
Okay, this incident gives us a second key insight then. While sophisticated attacks are inevitable, robust backup and disaster recovery plans are the ultimate firewall against catastrophic loss, and a principled stance against ransom payments can ultimately strengthen national resilience.
Well put. It shows recovery is possible, even without paying.
And then there's the alleged AGESIC database leak, February 2025. This one feels particularly significant because AGESIC is the central agency, right? The heart of Uruguay's e-government and cybersecurity infrastructure. An alleged breach there would carry immense symbolic weight.
Precisely. It hits right at the core.
Yeah.
February 11-12, 2025, reports emerge of an alleged leak from AGESIC's Citizen Service CRM system, their customer relationship management system.
What kind of data?
Approximately 574,600 records, including emails and phone numbers, offered for sale on breach forums, that notorious illicit online marketplace.
For how much?
Just $120 Monero, a privacy-focused cryptocurrency. The data was claimed to be pretty recent, from December 5, 2024.
And who broke the story?
Again, independent cybersecurity firms like Birmingham Cyber Arms, BCA, and Team Capybara were the first to publicize this potential breach.
Not AGESIC itself first.
Doesn't seem like it. AGESIC Director Hebert Paguas confirmed an investigation was underway, stating publicly that, quote, no critical info appeared to have been compromised.
Okay, the standard no critical info line. What did their investigation find?
Their subsequent investigation concluded it wasn't a direct compromise of AGESIC's core infrastructure. Instead, it was attributed to the exploitation of a vulnerability by individuals using authorized users of the service.
Authorized users, so an inside job. Or credentials stolen.
It strongly suggests either an insider threat, malicious, or maybe just accidental negligence or a credential compromise, possibly via social engineering where users are tricked into giving up their login details. Someone even commented it was likely suckers who fall into the trap.
So not a direct breach of their central fortified systems, but still deeply concerning. A vulnerability related to authorized access. Even if the data wasn't deemed critical, it's still personal info from a highly trusted source.
Exactly. even if it wasn't, say, national defense secrets. An incident at the very heart of the nation's digital governance, especially involving citizen contact info, can significantly damage public confidence. Trust in the state's digital services takes a hit.
And what does it highlight?
It unequivocally highlights the critical need for robust internal controls, multi-factor authentication, and continuous security training for all authorized users, not just focusing on external threats.
And the communication aspect again.
Yeah, the reactive nature of the public communication, where third-party researchers sounded the alarm first. That also played a role in how this incident was perceived by the public. It looks like you're behind the curve.
Right. Finally, let's talk about the TV Ciudad website defacement. April 2025, this gov.eth attacker used a particularly disturbing, cytologically impactful method, moving beyond just simple defacement.
They absolutely did. April 24th, 2025. The website at TV Ciudad, Uruguay's public TV channel, defaced again by an attacker using the gov.eth alias.
And the method?
This represents a significant escalation in tactics. The site featured AI-generated, deeply compromising images of prominent Uruguayan political figures, presidential candidates Orsi and Case, Pablo Lima again.
So deepfakes used offensively.
Essentially, yeah. This wasn't just a political message. It was a deeply personal, targeted attack using emerging deepfake technology. And the accompanying message from gov.eth was equally threatening and taunting.
What did it say?
Things like, changing passwords doesn't erase the crap already done, and if it makes you uncomfortable to see yourselves naked, generated by AI, wait to see yourselves as you are, because we haven't exposed you yet.
Wow. That's chilling. An alarming escalation, crossing into psychological warfare. Using deepfake imagery for disinformation and reputational damage. Feels like a new frontier in cyber attacks.
It absolutely does. This incident poses new, complex challenges for authorities, for media alike. It's not just about technical recovery anymore. It's about rapid verification, debunking fabricated content, the complex application of existing legal frameworks to address AI-assisted defamation, digital manipulation.
Yeah, the law struggles to keep up with tech like that.
Always does. TV Ciudad immediately filed a complaint with the Unidad de Delitos Informáticos, and an investigation is ongoing.
So these case studies, taken together, what's the big picture they paint?
They illustrate the complex reality, I think. While Uruguay has developed advanced strategic frameworks for cybersecurity, the consistent implementation of those policies and agile responses to diverse, evolving threats, that remains a significant ongoing challenge. They demonstrate that the journey to comprehensive digital security is continuous, and it's fraught with unexpected turns.
Okay, so we've laid out the landscape of attacks, Uruguay's official standing. Now let's pivot to the channels. How did this information actually get out? Because this is where that battle for perception truly comes into play, where the conflicting narratives we've alluded to really emerge. How did the Uruguayan public and the world learn about these incidents?
Information primarily flowed through three distinct channels, each with its own, characteristics and biases.
Okay, what are they?
First, you had the official government communications, coming from AGESIC, CERTuy, the specific ministries affected by the breaches. CERTuy publishes stats regularly. AGESIC directors give official statements, things like that.
Channel 1, the official word.
Right. Second, mainstream media played a significant role. National and regional news sources, El País, El Observador, Subrayado, they provided extensive coverage, often attempting to balance the hacker claims with the official statements, and sometimes explicitly highlighting discrepancies between them.
Channel 2, the media interpretation.
Yep. And third, crucially, there was direct disclosure by the threat actors themselves.
How did they do that?
Often via highly visible website defacements, like we saw, posts on illicit forums like breach forums, where stolen data might be offered for sale, or through encrypted messaging platforms like Telegram.
Channel 3, direct from the source.
The attackers.
Exactly.
And the content varied wildly. Political manifestos, data for sale, direct threats, claims of exposing critical vulnerabilities. It was all over the place.
Okay. And what's the broader critique of how those official channels communicated during these crises? Was it timely, transparent, accurate across the board, or was there a pattern?
The evaluation reveals considerable variability, and often, a pattern of reactive rather than proactive communication.
Reactive, meaning they responded after the fact.
Often, yes. For major incidents like the MIDES leaks and that alleged AGESIC breach, third-party security firms like Birmingham CyberArms were frequently the first to report these publicly, often before any official acknowledgement came out.
Which suggests?
It strongly suggests either significant deficiencies in the government's internal detection mechanisms or, perhaps more likely, strategic delays in public communication. Either way, it leads to a reactive posture that can seriously undermine public trust.
And sometimes they downplayed things.
Definitely saw that. In the Dynasia hack, initial official statements tended to downplay the depth of the breach, presenting it as superficial compared to the hacker's bold claims of deeper access.
But there was an exception.
Yeah, it's worth noting Paysandu Mayor Nicolas Oliveira was a notable exception. He was remarkably open about the severity of the ransomware attack on his city and his principled decision not to pay the ransom. That demonstrated a far more transparent approach, which likely bolstered public confidence in his leadership during that crisis.
So inconsistency, a reactive stance, and that's exactly what creates an information vacuum, right?
Absolutely.
And as we know, that vacuum often gets filled very quickly by alternative narratives, which is where the various gov.eth personas and Alberto Daniel Hill really step in, pushing back hard against the official story. Alberto, in particular, was very frustrated by what he saw unfolding, wasn't he?
He was, profoundly so. His frustration arguably culminated when the arrest of this young guy, Vladdy, became what he saw as a significant turning point in this battle for perception.
Tell me about the Vladdy arrest.
Okay, so an 18-year-old, identified as Vladdy, was arrested. Authorities linked him to a series of attacks. Dynasia, Mides, even private entities like Buchibus, a ferry company and a shopping center. This arrest, which authorities touted as a major success, immediately sparked a huge public debate within Uruguay's tech and media circles.
Okay. And what was gov.eth's stated motivation for their actions, especially in light of Vladdy's arrest? Did it shift or become more focused after that?
It seems like it did. While some gov.eth personas, particularly the Argentine one, initially claimed simple boredom or fun for certain defacements, like the El País Uruguay CMS compromise.
Right, the for fun motive.
Yeah, but a much stronger, consistent, and politically charged theme emerged from the gov.eth persona, active in Uruguay after Vladdy's arrest. The narrative became justice for Vlad and freedom for our comrade.
So it became about Vladdy.
Exactly. Their actions, they insisted, were framed as hacktivism, aiming to expose what they viewed as government negligence and, more controversially, to directly protest Vladdy's imprisonment.
So it really shifted from maybe pure tech vandalism to an act of digital protest and solidarity. But gov.eth also pushed back hard against some of the broader accusations leveled against them, denying a lot of what authorities were implying.
Absolutely. The gov.eth persona active in Uruguay flat out denied being responsible for hacking Maids or Dynasia in terms of deep data exfiltration. They explicitly denied publishing, filtering, or selling any data, which is where the more serious criminal charges typically arise, right?
Right. Data theft and sale is different from defacement.
It's a totally different ballpark, legally and ethically. They were very careful to draw a clear line. They claimed responsibility for defacements, more about public display, mockery, but not major government breaches involving widespread data theft or illicit selling. They also explicitly stated they weren't affiliated with groups like La Pampa Leaks, who are known for big data breaches in Argentina. This distinction for them was absolutely crucial to their counter-narrative.
Okay. But if they denied actively stealing new data from government systems, how did they explain their apparent access to information? Like with that Buchibus Turismo incident, or the capabilities of Vladdy's Telegram bot. They talked a lot about OSINT, right? Open source intelligence.
Yes, and this is a truly crucial point of their counter-narrative. It highlights a common, often misunderstood vulnerability.
How so?
For the Buchibus Turismo incident, gov.eth claimed they didn't break in. Instead, they said they used Intelligence X, a widely available OSINT tool, to find already leaked credentials from old data breaches, things floating around on the dark web or paste sites.
Okay, so using existing leaks.
Exactly. They then used these pre-existing exposed credentials to simply log into administrative panels. Effectively, they walked in, as they put it, rather than breaking down a door.
And Vladdy's Telegram bot? Same idea.
Similar logic, according to gov.eth. They insisted it didn't actively breach government systems for new data. Instead, it used publicly filtered credentials, usernames and passwords already compromised and available, maybe from databases like InfoExperto in Argentina, a known source of publicly available leaked data to search and aggregate existing leaked data.
So like a search engine for previously leaked stuff.
They consistently compared it to a public search tool, implying they were merely organizing already exposed information, not committing new acts of theft. In their view, this distinction fundamentally meant their actions were about exposing pre-existing systemic weaknesses, not committing new, deep cybercrimes.
So they're framing it as, look how bad your security already is. We just found the keys you left lying around, rather than, we actively broke in and stole new stuff.
That's exactly the framing, a demonstration of existing vulnerabilities and negligence.
And how did they critique the legal process, the specific charges brought against Vladdy?
Both gov.eth and Alberto Daniel Hill were vociferous in their critique. They argued the charges against Vladdy, like aggravated data violation, completely misrepresented what actually happened.
Why?
They insisted Vladdy's actions were limited to using publicly available information or conducting website defacements, not deep data theft or illegal interception of communications. They viewed it as the legal system using sledgehammer charges for what they considered less severe actions, a fundamental mismatch.
A mismatch between the alleged action and the severity of the crime charge.
Right. Which, they argued, demonstrated a profound lack of technical understanding within the justice system regarding modern cyber activities. They felt the charges didn't fit the actual technical reality of what occurred.
And this perceived mismatch, this alleged overcharging, it leads directly to that potent scapegoat narrative they put forth.
Exactly. Hill and gov.eth strongly implied Vladdy was arrested primarily because he was already known and doxed, meaning his identity, his online activities were publicly accessible, making him an easier target for authorities.
Easier than going after anonymous international groups.
Precisely. They explicitly suggested the Uruguayan government needed a win, needed to look like they were cracking down effectively on cybercrime after a series of really embarrassing public defacements.
So Vladdy was sacrificed for PR, that's the claim.
That's the core of their claim. Sacrificed to divert public attention from bigger, more elusive, harder-to-catch threats, like sophisticated organized carding groups involved in credit card fraud or large-scale data sellers operating internationally. It paints the government's actions in a very cynical, politically motivated light, prioritizing public relations over genuine cybersecurity efforts.
And what was Alberto Daniel Hill's core criticism of traditional media in all of this? You mentioned his frustration, saying they gave zero ball to the hacker side of the story.
His core criticism, a very passionate one, was exactly that traditional media outlets gave zero ball, meaning zero attention, zero credibility to gov.eth's side of the story, even when detailed explanations were publicly available, often on Hill's own platforms.
Why did he think they did that?
He perceived it as a deliberate editorial choice, to ignore information that complicated or even contradicted the official narrative provided by the government. He particularly criticized media for focusing on what he called garbage.
Garbage? Like what?
Meaning sensationalized personal details about the hackers or the victims. Instead of delving into the actual legal situation, the technical vulnerabilities exploited, or the underlying systemic security flaws these incidents exposed. He felt they missed the real story.
So he essentially took matters into his own hands, tried to bypass these traditional media gatekeepers. How did he do that to get the hackers' counter-narrative out there?
His primary tool was Twitter Spaces, that live audio feature on X, formerly Twitter. He used it as a direct, unfiltered platform to let gov.eth speak directly to the public, unedited, without media spin or interpretation. And he didn't just host, he actively amplified gov.eth's audios, shared screenshots of their posts, meticulously saved videos and discussions on platforms like the Wayback Machine to create a permanent public record.
He was creating an alternative archive.
Exactly. He directly challenged and provoked journalists, tagging them, copying press members into live spaces, daring them to listen and report on what was being said.
And he reframed the attacks themselves.
Yeah, he even offered a highly controversial reframing of the defacements, suggesting they were a form of free security testing that exposed critical vulnerabilities for the public good, subtly implying a public service rather than a crime.
That's a bold reframing. Despite Hill's very public efforts, did any of this result in significant mainstream media engagement with gov.eth's explanations? Or did the silence largely persist?
Despite Hill's persistent efforts, mainstream media largely maintained what he called total silence on gov.eth's explanations and alternative perspectives.
Really? Mostly ignored it.
Seems so. When they did engage, it was often, according to gov.eth, through attacks or labels. For instance, gov.eth mentioned being called a Nazi by a media outlet after an interview.
Referring to the Argentine gov.eth's statements.
Presumably, but used in a way that from gov.eth's perspective, effectively serve to dismiss the person and their technical arguments, rather than addressing the substance of their claims or motivations related to the Uruguayan incidents. This reinforces the idea of a significant resistance within traditional media to engage deeply with challenging or uncomfortable alternative viewpoints, especially from those labeled as criminals.
And gov.eth had their own frustrating media experience, too, beyond just being ignored, right? A specific instance where they felt misrepresented.
Yes, quite acutely. Gov.eth recounted spending a significant amount of time providing detailed answers to 25 specific questions posed by Montevideo Portal, a Uruguayan news outlet.
Okay, so they engaged with that one.
They did. But the resulting article was delayed and apparently contained factual errors, like incorrectly comparing them to another hacker, Santiago Rosenblatt. This experience further reinforced gov.eth's view of mainstream media inaccuracy, their perceived lack of diligence, and a general disrespect for their specific perspective or the nuances of their technical explanations.
Okay. What about official contact? Did any government officials, Uruguayan or otherwise, ever reach out to gov.eth to try and understand the vulnerabilities they claim to have exploited, maybe to strengthen defenses based on what they found?
This is a critical point in their narrative. Gov.eth stated explicitly that absolutely no government official from Uruguay, Argentina, or anywhere else ever reached out to them to understand the vulnerabilities they demonstrated.
Nobody tried to debrief them, essentially.
Nope. Which in their narrative suggests the focus of authorities was almost exclusively on blame, prosecution, and projecting an image of competence through arrests, rather than on genuinely understanding and preventing future vulnerabilities through dialogue or even engagement with the other side.
That fuels their claim that authorities were more interested in punishment than prevention.
Greatly bolsters that claim, yes.
And this perceived lack of understanding, lack of engagement from authorities. It led both gov.eth and Hill to use incredibly strong language, explicitly accusing the press and government of being liars.
They absolutely did not mince words. They firmly believed that official narratives were actively fabricated, deliberately constructed to make arrests seem like bigger deals than they were, to project governmental competence, calm public fears.
All
All while, in their view, ignoring the real criminals, like organized carding groups or large-scale data sellers who were causing far more widespread and significant financial harm. Their opinion of the police and justice system was remarkably low, often calling them stupid or painted a local slang term implying useless or ineffective. They argued law enforcement consistently pursued lugus, or small fish, easy targets like Vladdy who were visible, therefore simple to arrest. Instead of the sharks, the organized, sophisticated criminal groups causing widespread systemic harm. It paints a picture of a justice system driven by easy wins, public perception, rather than effectively tackling the most serious threats.
Okay, this gives us a third key insight. In the digital age, the truth about a cyber incident isn't just about data, it's about narrative control. And when official accounts fall short, alternative voices will emerge, actively contesting the story and challenging public trust.
Absolutely. The narrative becomes the battleground.
So, in the face of all these challenges, escalating attacks, this fierce battle for public perception, like, what is the Uruguayan government actually doing to strengthen its cybersecurity framework? To respond more effectively? What's their official strategy?
Okay, let's look at the structure. Several key cybersecurity entities are involved in Uruguay's defense architecture, each with distinct but complementary roles.
Who are the main players?
AGESIC is central, the Agency of Electronic Government and Information and Knowledge Society. They're the pillar for e-government and cybersecurity policy, responsible for critical national digital infrastructure like digital identity systems, digital signatures. And importantly, they oversee CERTuy.
And CERTuy. What's their specific role?
CERTuy is the National Computer Security Incident Response Team, the operational heart of Uruguay's cyber defense. Established back in 2008, operated a 247 Security Operations Center, the SOC, since 2016.
What they actually do day to day?
Incident management, digital forensics, recovery operations, vulnerability analysis, even ethical hacking to proactively identify weaknesses. Plus, CERTuy is a member of FIRST, a global forum of incident response teams, showing international integration.
Okay, so AGESIC for policy, CERTuy for operations. What about law enforcement? Who investigates and makes arrests?
That falls to the Unidad de Cybercrime, the National Police Cybercrime Unit, and the broader Unidad de Delitos Informáticos, the Computer Crimes Unit. They're the primary law enforcement bodies tasked with investigating cybercrimes, doing digital forensics, making arrests.
They handled Dynasia, MIDS TV Ciudad investigations?
They were the primary investigative units for those, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And they made that arrest in the DNIC incident.
Any other key bodies?
You also have the URCVP, the Regulatory Control Unit for Personal Data. It's an independent body overseeing personal data protection under Uruguay's data privacy law, Law NDR 18.331. They were involved in the MEAD's data breaches to ensure compliance with privacy rules.
Okay, and what about the big ministries? Interior, defense, where do they fit?
The Ministry of the Interior oversees national security, public order, all law enforcement, including the cybercrime unit.
Yeah.
The Ministry of Defense is responsible for national defense, increasingly including cyber defense. And DINASIA, the civil aviation authority that got hacked, actually falls under the Ministry of Defense's purview.
So a lot of different agencies involved, theoretically supposed to work together seamlessly.
Theoretically.
But despite this seemingly comprehensive structure, what are the persistent challenges? You mentioned attribution, figuring out who the attackers are is really hard, especially if they're overseas.
It is a massive challenge. Attribution, especially for sophisticated attacks coming from outside Uruguay's borders, like that alleged Argentine connection to the DINASIA hack, poses significant investigative hurdles.
And expertise.
Well, Alberto Daniel Hill, as we've discussed, has been particularly vocal criticizing what he perceives as incompetence within Uruguayan law enforcement when dealing with complex computer crimes, suggesting a critical need for enhanced technical expertise within those units.
And just the sheer volume.
Yeah, the sheer volume of incidents, those thousands of attacks CERTuy is now detecting, presents a considerable challenge for existing resources, stretching their capabilities thin, compacting timely and effective response.
Okay. Despite these operational challenges, Uruguay is clearly pushing forward with significant legal and regulatory developments. Taking a more proactive policy stance, what are some of the key new frameworks?
Yes, on the policy front, there's been substantial movement. A really significant step is Decree 66025, promulgated in April 2025.
What does it do?
It's a new, highly detailed cybersecurity framework. It mandates the implementation of AGESIC's comprehensive cybersecurity framework. And this isn't just for central government. It extends to departmental governments, autonomous entities, and critically key private sector organizations involved in essential services.
Like?
Telecoms, energy, water, digital infrastructure, financial services, critical infrastructure providers.
And what does it mandate for them?
It establishes clear, legally binding obligations for incident reporting, mandates regular security audits, requires robust security considerations in all public procurement related to IT.
So it's not just a suggestion, it's a legal mandate across public and critical private sectors. What about a broader, overarching national strategy?
In parallel, they have the National Cybersecurity Strategy 2024-2030. This provides the overarching strategic direction.
What kind of goals does it outline?
Ambitious ones. Improved governance, enhanced digital resilience, aggressive cybercrime prevention, strengthened cyber defense capabilities, robust critical infrastructure protection, fostering a national cybersecurity culture, developing a local cybersecurity industry, active engagement in international policy dialogues. It's comprehensive, long-term plans designed to really elevate Uruguay's cyber posture.
That sounds incredibly impressive on paper, a really forward-thinking strategic vision. But given the ongoing success of diverse attacks, are there lags in implementation, enforcement across all these different entities, especially maybe at the local level?
Unfortunately, yes. This is a recurring theme that comes through in the sources. Despite these new frameworks, ambitious strategies, the continued success of diverse attacks, as shown by our case studies, indicates a notable lag between policy formulation and its effective, widespread implementation and enforcement.
Where is the lag most acute?
It seems particularly acute across all government entities, but especially at local and municipal levels. The Paysandu ransomware incident demonstrated that profoundly.
So the translation from policy to practice is the hard part.
Exactly. The translation of high-level, well-intentioned policies into consistent, practical operational security practices, things like regular patching, strong access controls, basic user training that remains a significant, persistent challenge for Uruguay.
Okay, this brings us to our fourth key insight. While national cybersecurity strategies are vital blueprints, their true strength lies not just in their design, but in the consistent, pervasive, and often arduous process of implementation across every layer of government and society.
Well said. The blueprint is only as good as the build-out.
So even with a strong strategic framework, the actual on-the-ground execution can be patchy, creating vulnerable points. What about new legal tools? Is there a new cybercrime bill in the works to strengthen their hand against these evolving threats?
Yes, there's a significant legislative initiative currently before Parliament. Aims to profoundly update Uruguay's criminal code for the digital age.
How so?
This proposed bill, directly responding to intelligence gathered by CERTuy on emerging threats, introduces 9 entirely new categories of cybercrime and significantly increases penalties for existing offenses when committed digitally.
Can you give examples?
Sure. To counter phishing and data theft, it criminalizes identity theft, illicit access to computer data, data infringement. To address malware and ransomware, it introduces offenses like abuse of devices, penalizing making or facilitating malicious programs, and damage to computer data.
What about financial fraud?
For financial fraud, it proposes substantially increased prison sentences when it's perpetrated via IT systems.
Any other elements in the bill?
Yeah, beyond specific offenses, it also includes broader elements, provisions for national education campaigns to raise public awareness, and a new national registry of cybercriminals.
That sounds like a comprehensive, much-needed update to their legal arsenal, giving law enforcement more teeth. What about mandatory incident reporting? That seems absolutely crucial for getting a full, real-time picture of the threat landscape across the whole nation.
It is indeed a transformative shift in their approach to information sharing. The new legal framework dramatically expands the existing National Incident Registry, making it mandatory for critical private sector entities, banks, payment networks, healthcare providers, telcos to report cybersecurity incidents directly to AGESIC.
And quickly.
Very quickly, within a strict 24-hour time frame. These entities also now have to appoint dedicated information security officers and proactively adopt preventative measures.
What's the rationale behind that?
The underlying rationale articulated by authorities is recognition that no one can defend themselves alone. This mandate is designed to break down those information silos, provide AGESIC and CERTuy with a near real-time, comprehensive view across the nation's critical infrastructure.
Allowing them to connect the dots faster.
Exactly. Allows for rapid cross-sector threat correlation, enabling faster, more effective collective defense.
That's a really smart move, creating a network effect for defense. And finally, international cooperation. Uruguay is joining a global compact, adhering to the Budapest Convention. Why is that particularly important in this interconnected digital threat environment?
It's a direct strategic response to the transnational nature of sophisticated cyber threats. Uruguay formally accepted the invitation to join the Council of Europe's Convention on Cybercrime, known as the Budapest Convention, in early 2023.
What does joining actually do for them?
It's incredibly significant. It integrates Uruguay into an established global network of 66 member states, provides formal mechanisms for cross-border investigative assistance, streamlined electronic evidence gathering. Membership also grants them access to legislative assistance, crucial capacity-building programs, helping elevate their capabilities further.
And it addresses a weakness.
Directly addresses what was previously Uruguay's lowest GCI score pillar, international cooperation. It's a deliberate, long-term effort to build the legal and diplomatic bridges needed to effectively pursue cyber adversaries wherever they operate globally. Because cyber criminals don't respect borders.
No, they don't. So effective cyber defense can't either.
Exactly. International cooperation is essential.
Okay. This all sounds like a nation actively building an increasingly robust legal and institutional framework, learning from its challenges, adapting. But how are individual companies and citizens faring, the everyday users of this digital infrastructure? That AGESIC survey from 2024-2025, which our sources draw from, it painted a pretty concerning picture, didn't it?
It really did. The AGESIC survey, based on a substantial sample, 600 companies, thousands of individual users across Uruguay, exposed a significant alarming discrepancy between cybersecurity concern and actual preventative action.
How so?
For companies, a high 78% expressed genuine concern about cybersecurity threats, which is good, right? They're aware.
Yeah, awareness is the first step.
But here's the catch. Only a mere 21% of those concerned companies felt really protected.
Only 21%, that's a huge gap.
The huge perception gap, absolutely alarming, points to maybe a false sense of security, or more likely, a recognition of vulnerability without effective mitigation actually happening.
So they're worried, but they're clearly not doing enough about it or not doing the right things. What specific deficiencies did the survey highlight within Uruguayan companies?
It unearthed some fundamental widespread deficiencies.
Mhm.
A substantial 77% of companies lack documented cybersecurity policies.
Wow, over three-quarters. That's basic stuff missing.
Motivational element gone. Nearly half, 47%, do not offer any cybersecurity training or awareness programs to their employees, which is critical given that human factor weakness we keep talking about.
Right.
And quite remarkably, 80% of medium to large companies perceive that their own clients don't prioritize cybersecurity, which might influence their own investment decisions, right? Why bother if customers don't care?
Interesting perception loop there. What about basic protections, antivirus, things like that?
The numbers are stark. Only 25% have a dedicated cybersecurity lead in their organization. A shocking 60% have never given even minimum cybersecurity training to staff. Only 16% encrypt portable devices like laptops or USB drives. And incredibly, 30% don't even have antivirus software installed.
30% with no antivirus. In this
Wow.
day and age, that's a huge collective blind spot for the private sector, especially for smaller and medium-sized businesses who might think they're too small to be targeted.
Exactly. Did their perception of risk change after actual ransomware attacks like Paysandu?
Did it?
Yes, the brutal reality of ransomware did shift some perceptions. Before these incidents, many businesses operated under that misguided belief. Attacks won't happen to us.
The "it won't happen to me" syndrome.
Totally. Ransomware delivered a harsh lesson, though, showed unequivocally, no matter the size or sector, any company can be digitally kidnapped.
But did the lesson stick?
Unfortunately, this survey also revealed a concerning tendency. Many companies revert to a reactive approach. They tend to lower their guard and investment after solving a crisis, rather than maintaining a consistent proactive stance.
So they fix the immediate problem, then forget about prevention until the next fire.
Seems like it. Security is still often seen as an additional expense. Experts estimate maybe US $20,000, $30,000 per year needed for adequate protection, which contrasts sharply with viewing it as a strategic investment, especially when an attack can easily cost over US $50,000 in direct damages, plus months of crippling inactivity and reputational harm. Pennywise, pound foolish.
Yeah, the cost of prevention versus the cost of a breach. It's usually no contest.
Right.
What about individuals, everyday internet users? Are they doing any better at protecting themselves?
Not significantly better, unfortunately. The survey found a concerning 17% of internet users in Uruguay don't even have antivirus software installed on their computers, leaving them highly vulnerable.
17%. Still pretty high.
Yeah. And among those who do have antivirus, a startling 1 in 3 don't even know what it is or how it functions. Avast was reported as the most common one used.
Okay. What about backups? Are people backing up their data?
Less than half. A mere 45% of computer users perform regular data backups, cloud or external devices, risking total data loss if something happens.
And smartphones. People live on those.
Numbers are slightly better there. 4 in 5 back up their smartphone data in some way, but only 36% do so regularly. 42% only sometimes. And a concerning 22% never back up their smartphone data.
Never. Wow. Okay, what's the direct, tangible impact of this lack of protection on individuals? Are people actually losing money, losing personal information due to online fraud?
Yes, very concretely. And at a significant scale. The survey revealed a startling 1 in 20 internet users in Uruguay lost money due to some form of online fraud in the last year alone.
1 in 20. How many people is that?
When you extrapolate, that translates to approximately 175,000 Uruguayans financially impacted, just in 1 year.
That's a lot of people losing money.
It is. Additionally, 2% of internet users lost personal information, affecting around 70,000 people. This direct financial and personal impact has led to some behavioral changes, at least. 49% of internet users stated they altered their online habits due to experiencing or trying to avoid fraud.
So almost half are changing habits, but the losses are still significant. It sounds like small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, PMEs as they call them there, are particularly vulnerable here. Why are they often such easy targets?
They are indeed disproportionately vulnerable, often described as easy targets. Hackers frequently launch random, untargeted attacks against SMEs, sometimes not even knowing the specific value of the data they're stealing, simply because the level of protection is notoriously low.
They're just spraying attacks and seeing what sticks.
Pretty much. And while various solutions and tools exist, even free and open source options, SMEs tend to implement them fragmentedly, often limiting efforts to maybe isolated awareness talks that quickly lose validity without ongoing reinforcement.
And ransomware is still the big threat for them.
Dominant threat. 90% of attacks reported in Uruguay are ransomware. And a staggering 70% of those start via phishing.
70% via phishing shows the power of user awareness training.
Absolutely. The remaining 30% stem from exploitable vulnerabilities like unpatched software or misconfigurations, basic hygiene stuff often.
And it's not just ransomware anymore. Data selling is increasing.
Increasingly, yeah. Stolen data from these less protected entities is sold on black markets instead of being held for ransom. Our sources mention over 450,000 mentions related to Uruguay found on illicit networks in 2024 alone. Data is the new currency.
Okay. This entire picture, government struggles, company unpreparedness, individual vulnerability, it points to a critical underlying issue, something that even the most advanced tech or the most comprehensive laws can't solve on their own, the human capital deficit. There's a significant shortage of skilled cybersecurity professionals, isn't there?
It is unequivocally identified as a critical vulnerability within Uruguay's cybersecurity ecosystem. A 2020 study by AGESIC and KPMG concluded Uruguay needs to double its existing cybersecurity workforce.
Double it. From what?
From around 600 specialists at the time, just to meet the growing needs and maintain its competitive edge.
That's a huge gap.
It's massive. This human capital bottleneck is arguably the most significant long-term threat to the sustainability of Uruguay's leadership position in cybersecurity.
How so?
What we're seeing is that advanced technologies, sophisticated organizational reforms, they're simply outpacing the human capacity to effectively operate, optimize, and defend them. You can buy the best locks, right? But if you don't have enough skilled locksmiths to install and maintain them, you're still exposed.
So, even if they acquire the best tools, draft the most robust policies, they simply don't have enough trained people to properly implement, manage, and continuously defend those systems. What's being done about education and training to address this critical gap?
There are efforts, but they are often described as being too slow given the urgent need. UTU, National Technical University, created a cybersecurity technical program.
That sounds promising.
It is, but the first graduates aren't expected until 2028, which doesn't address the immediate demand now.
Right, that's a long pipeline.
Yeah. AGESIC and various academic institutions have identified these needs, developed educational proposals, but there's a very clear, persistent call from experts for dedicated funding, skilled personnel, to ensure the effective implementation of that ambitious national cybersecurity strategy. It needs people to make it real.
So this truly highlights the vital, ongoing importance of robust public-private cooperation and, perhaps most importantly, widespread education across the board.
Absolutely. Panelists at a recent cybersecurity event in Uruguay all universally agreed on a fundamental truth. The principal door of entry for hackers remains the human factor.
Still the human factor.
Still the human factor, which reinforces the need for continuous education at all levels: general public, software developers, end users within government, and private companies, strengthening public-private cooperation, building resilient networks. It isn't just about sharing tech. It's about fostering a pervasive, ingrained culture of security awareness and responsibility.
Okay, this points to our final key insight. Despite top-tier technical and organizational frameworks, Uruguay's digital Achilles heel remains the human element and a critical human capital deficit, underscoring that true cyber resilience is a cultural, not just a technological, achievement.
Well put. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, even in cybersecurity.
So what does this all mean for us? After digging through all this, we've peeled back the intricate layers of Uruguay's cybersecurity landscape, uncovered a truly fascinating paradox. A nation recognized globally for its advanced strategic framework, impressive efforts in digital defense, yet simultaneously battling an unprecedented surge in cyber attacks, and grappling with the significant, often painful gap between high-level policy and its effective, widespread implementation on the ground.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think, where it challenges our conventional understanding of information. We've heard directly from the individuals behind some of these incidents, like the various gov.eth personas.
There's a counter-narrative.
Exactly. Their accounts offer a starkly different, sometimes unsettling perspective than what often hits the mainstream headlines. They suggest a reality where vulnerabilities are exploited not always by shadowy master criminals, but sometimes by opportunistic activists using publicly available tools.
The OSINT angle again.
Right. And where, crucially, the justice system might be focusing its efforts on easy wins, arresting visible, traceable individuals like Vladdy, rather than tackling the elusive underlying systemic flaws or the larger, more organized criminal enterprises causing widespread harm.
Which raises profound questions, doesn't it?
Huge questions about who truly controls the narrative when digital security is breached, and whose version of events we, as the public, are asked to believe. It becomes a trust issue.
What's truly fascinating here, if we step back for a second, is the profound contrast between Uruguay's rapid, almost idealistic adoption of sophisticated cybersecurity strategies and the slow, arduous, sometimes frustrating process of actually implementing those strategies across all government levels and fostering that universal culture of digital security among businesses, among citizens alike.
Yeah, the policy is fast, the implementation is slow and hard.
Exactly. The country is making impressive strides in legislation, international cooperation, building cutting-edge technical centers, but the real battle remains in closing that critical human capital gap and ensuring consistent, proactive, pervasive defense across every single digital entry point. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Definitely a marathon.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it serves as a powerful universal reminder for all of us, no matter where we live or what we do online.
How so?
In an age where information flies instantly, narratives are often fiercely contested, official stories can be slow, sometimes opaque, even selectively presented, and where the very actors involved actively offer counter-narratives, the responsibility to critically analyze what we're being told falls squarely on your shoulders, as the listener, as the citizen.
Yeah, you can't just passively consume the news anymore,
Yeah.
especially on complex topics like this. You have to engage, question the sources.
Which raises an important question for you, the listener, to maybe ponder long after our deep dive today concludes. In a world where your personal data, your digital identity, your trust in institutions are constantly at stake, are you just accepting the headlines at face value?
Or are you willing to push past them?
Yeah. Are you willing to push past them to grasp the complex, often messy realities of cybersecurity, of justice, and how information itself is shaped, spun, and contested in our increasingly digital world?
Something to definitely keep thinking about.